Okay. I think we're live now.
I think I have the questions. So, like, together we're supposed to say, like, how would you evaluate the UDL lesson plans that,
Yeah, if you were a sub, how would you be able to implement
yeah,
these based on how they're written?
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that if I were a sub and I were like looking at them, I would feel confident because it kind of does explicitly say what to do, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, they,
The I chose, it was like students will enter, you say this, you give them this, and then you do this PowerPoint. It was very detailed.
oh, yeah, I agree. Because they definitely give you, like, a beginning, a during, and, like, a closing. And so, like, at least all the ones that I found too, and the ones that I did, they did specific, like, how you're going to start the lesson, what you're going to do during the lesson, and how the lesson's going to finish. So,
Yeah, quick question. Who was note taker last time? Like, am I supposed to be note taker today? Is that Oh, okay, you know that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
Or it's you, that means I don't. Okay, so it's Maya next week. Okay.
Okay, cool. Sorry. I just didn't want to like not take notes and I'm supposed to be doing that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Laura. Okay, perfect. But yeah, I say that I just the ones I saw it was like, and then it even gave like what kind of formative assessment they need to use and what kind of like assignment they do.
One of the ones that I found was actually really vague, and it's the one that I rated the least just because it didn't have a really in-depth explanation. If I would have been as a substitute, I would have looked at that and been like, well, okay, I guess I just kind of have to come up with my own plan of action.
Oh, yeah. So I guess some of them, yeah, would be. I guess if you kind of have a sub that day, you would want the more detailed one.
Mm-hmm.
Or just, well, I had one where it was just a video, pretty much. It was a video and an assignment. I was like, okay. I put that one my least because I was like, well, that's not really teaching, I guess. I mean, videos are helpful, but there wasn't really much with the video.
yeah.
It was
A
weird.
lot of mine had like the materials written down too, like what was included in the lesson plan and what they needed so that they like had the idea ahead of time. And I thought that was like really smart, like
Yeah.
just to make sure that everyone has the materials.
That was a good. I think it's important because like if you don't know what supplies you're gonna need, you're gonna be there and you're gonna be like, oh, I don't have this for
Right.
this lesson. Do something else, and then that kind of throws off that balance. Yeah. So anyone else really?
They all gave like a good description at the beginning, I thought, like of what the lesson plan was going to be. So that way they like knew right away whether it was a language, like an English language or like a math and like what it was going to include. So
Yeah, and I think all of them, even though like one of them was like kind of more vague, like I think all of them at least like address the issue, like the possibility of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have this amount of students, or like just like students with like IEPs or like 504 plans, just so we know, and like kind of like went off of like saying like what they're gonna do to like adjust, kind of try and help that student, I guess, or those students.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because it was like, there's this many students in the classroom, and these are all on IEPs. I had a few of those that said that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's helpful for a sub. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like, okay, there are these kids in this class I have to be kind of aware of.
right, so that way you have like an understanding as if like they're like falling behind or like
Yeah.
something like
And
that.
there's a sub, it's not like, the worst state because no one knows what to do, or they're even more behind. But usually when there's a sub, I've never really, every time I've had a sub, they never really had them teach much.
Yeah.
Oh, or just like go over like practice review
Yeah.
or something.
Stuff like we've done before, and we're just practicing, or we watch like a video.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much my sub experiences. So I don't know what they do now. If subs have to like show up and like, but I think as a sub, I'd be able to follow these plans pretty. Well. I mean, there's always going to be that like uncertainty. You know, they won't know what to do 100% of the time because it's not their class, and it's not their, and they didn't plan that lesson, so there's always going to be that.
Yeah, and I mean like you just may have like a different, I guess, like style or like whatever. Like you may just feel like you may take it in a different direction if it's not necessarily clear, or if you feel like you need to take it in a different direction, I guess. I guess there's just like always a possibility that it's not going to follow the lesson plan exactly as laid out by the like regular instructor or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we've kind of covered that. We can move on to B. What did you learn about UDL by reviewing these lesson plans? I personally learned that UDL, multiple means it really had like a really good plan, and even a plan for those who would need more reinforcement or help. Like, I don't know. I think all these plans really had those multiple means of engagement and assessment like that I noticed.
Yeah, it's just like it's important. Like it shows how important having a lesson plan is, because like putting ourselves in the shoes of being a 7, like having to read those and being like, well, am I going to be able to teach a class through this plan? Like it puts a different perspective on like how you portray your lesson plan for someone else to be able to read it, rather than just like you, because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that kind of like let me like see like how I like maybe I'd want to always write my lesson plans like I wouldn't be the one teaching it, but someone else would, That's kind of a good perspective to get into. I think that's kind of what these taught. And the first question.
Yeah, write them in the eyes of someone else, like as if you were someone else.
Yeah, like if you were reading it without having any knowledge, you'd be able to do it really well. So that's kind of what I learned, that I think UDL is super important in a classroom and always having a.
I agree. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, pretty much.
That pretty much covered it. I mean,
oh, oops, I do.
I mean, those are pretty like broad questions, like similar questions. So
yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. A song reference accident. Okay. Anyway, I guess we can each kind of do our individual contributions.
Yeah. Does someone like specifically want to go first, or do you want me to?
We may steal each other's. Who knows? We probably did. We probably have overlap.
Shouldn't. There was like millions out there, so.
Or like 15. I wouldn't say millions.
But a good amount.
Yeah.
There's a good amount. Okay, then I'll go first.
Okay.
So the 4 lesson plans that I did, I'll just name them and then I'll go like one by one. So I did one called My Favorite Season. That was an English language one. Fable, the moral of the story. That was an English language one. And then teaching fractions, and then using models to add fractions. So the first one, which was My Favorite Season, it was for kindergarten through 2nd grade, so it could be like kind of for anything. It's pretty much, it was like to teach students to recognize symbols and months for each of the seasons that they were going to write about. So it's like for practice opinion writing, so that they could write based on what they know and what they like, with details and like closing. This lesson took 45 minutes, and I thought it was like pretty good because it was a writing where they got to write like strictly for themselves, rather than something like that they like a summary, or I don't know. I think personal writing is the best way to have writing, because it allows them to be more free. And it allowed them to have like a variety of choices of like what they wanted to do, whether it was like Christmas or summer, and like why they liked it. And then they got to do it like with illustrations at the end, and I just thought that was super good. They mentioned that even though it could have been for 2nd graders, that they were going to use a 1st grade reading rubric, and I don't know why, but I thought that was interesting to like learn about. And then they just did like how at the beginning she would do like an instructional method, like reading a book, and then they would watch a video to like understand the seasons better, and then they would be engaged with like writing seasons on the board and like what their favorite holiday or like their favorite occurrence was during that sort of season. And then she mentioned using a web organizer, which I thought was like pretty good because I don't know, I think webs are the easiest because you can just put something in the middle and build off of it. And that's honestly the easiest way to brainstorm for me. So I thought that was super cool that she used that. And then closing, she said it was like time to share, so they got to read it out loud and have the class engage with them. And I think that's super important, especially for little kids, because it allows them to build confidence at an early age rather than like not getting that exposure. So I really liked that one. That one was one of my favorites, but I didn't think it was the most effective. The next one was the Fable one. This was strictly towards second graders. This was another English language one. And it was focusing on the literary genres. And it was to like identify the elements of fable and like differentiate it from other genres, like what they previously learned. And they were going to explain the moral of a fable. And this one was like 2 hours long. And I think that's like a little too long for an English language lesson. So I kind of thought this one was the least effective. And it was just like, when I was reading it, it wasn't very laid out like properly. It was kind of like all over the place. Like she mentioned how they could be like on their own or in a small group or in a big group, or like they could pick a fable of their own or like create one or like one that they already knew. And I just thought it was like way too like all over the place, and it was just not. And like I said, 2 hours is just way too long. Like especially for second graders, they get unengaged way too fast. So that was my least effective one that I read. So for one of my math ones, it was teaching fractions, and it was geared towards 3rd and 5th grade. This one was 45 minutes long. This ended up being my most effective one that I found. It was like using base 10 blocks and whole numbers to help learn the definition of fractions, the part of the fraction, relationship to the whole and part, and how to write a fraction. She was, or he, I don't really know who was teaching it, but they like learned through multiple means of engagement. Like she asked her questions, and then she would verbally say what the lesson was, and then she'd give visual demonstrations. So they got like both. Then they got to do it on their own, and then they got to teach it to a peer, so they got to interact with their other classmates. And then she mentioned at the top that it was like scheduled towards a boy with autism, so it was more of a learning lesson. And then at the end they did like an exit pass, so they still had to do the work, but it was more of a lesson and an engaged lesson, rather than you hear what it's about to do and then you do it on your own. So I kind of liked that, how it was more geared towards learning, and then they did it a little bit towards the end to leave the class rather than hearing the lesson and doing it for 30 minutes on their own. So that one was my most effective, and it was just laid out really, really nicely. She did a really good job. And my last one was using models to add fractions. This was geared towards 3rd and 4th grade, and this one was also 45 minutes long. This one was about adding fractions with like denominators with fraction strips. So it was kind of like my lesson plan. So it was like kind of cool to see how she did it. But she did an example to open examples together. Then she passed out a handout with this like the strips, the fraction strips. They did one for like together, and then they did some independently. And then after they were done with their worksheet, she asked students to volunteer and come up and do it on the whiteboard. And then at the end, she asked like the students what they learned today. And it was a really good lesson plan as well. So that one could also have been my most effective. It was very similar to the way that I had done it, and like the way that we have learned, I feel like, to do it. And so I just felt like it was pretty basic, not the most effective. But yeah, so those were mine.
Good. So I may have misunderstood or something, but I thought we were supposed to find example lessons from the standards that she gave us, the 4.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if I misunderstood either, but like
I did.
Off the website, like I looked up like how it said, look at the English
Like
whatever and like the math, and then choose out of those.
5.2, yeah, and you had to like filter it and look.
Oh,
That's what I
Your own.
did.
Good choice.
No, but it was good information though to like
Yeah.
know. Like it was very helpful and
I don't know
useful.
why we had to filter it down. I mean, like I think the assignment still could have been fine if we could have just chosen 4, because it's still kind of the same idea, really. But I think we were just. I mean, I still think it gets the same idea across.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like you still see how those lesson plans are done.
yeah.
Subjects, but I think we were supposed to do it from the standards that she gave us.
Oh, you guys are probably right. I must have just, I don't know what I did then. I was honestly kind of confused anyways, so.
Ever.
Maya, then you might have to help me after math tomorrow.
Okay.
Tell me what I'm doing wrong. But okay, so then I might lose points for the discussion, but that's okay. So the rest of you guys do what you guys are supposed to do.
I'll go next.
Okay.
So I had the 4. So the reading for 5th grade .2, the standard, it's I'm just gonna say all 4, and then it's I am a vertebrate. I'm sorry, am I a vertebrate? Am I a vertebrate? It's like it's actually a mixture of like being able to like read informational text and also science knowledge. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 kind of thing. So I thought that was cool. And then the next one was inclusive writing lesson plan. It's pretty much like they pick a genre and they write a story. And then my math one for order of operations, it was just called order of operations. I'll explain that. my last math one was about like percents and graphing. It was called 50% learning, 50% understanding. So back to am I a vertebrate? It's they at first they start out, they discover 5 characteristics that are needed to be considered a vertebrate. So they would have already had previous knowledge of like what a vertebrate and an invertebrate is, but now they have to like get more specific on like what makes a vertebrate, and then they have to research it on their iPads and like read informational text, and they each have to pick 2 animals, one that's a vertebrate and one that's an invertebrate, and they have to read about it and kind of like do a research paper, not paper, but like a research page on it, and like pick the animal and like this is why it's a vertebrate because of these 5 characteristics that they talk about, and then the invertebrate, here's why it's an invertebrate. So it's kind of like they're learning about science and animal classification, but they're also being able to read informational text and kind of do research on that. So I like that one a lot. Then the writing one was fun. It was kind of like your seasonal one, the writing. It's like I said, they pick a genre. They get to pick any genre they want, and then they get to write a story, but it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And it has to have spelling, grammar, all that stuff in it. And they can they have to do a rough draft, and they can have like stuff for the rough draft, like a web, like Lauren was talking about, brainstorm charts, organizers, and then they like do the rough draft, and then they each practice editing their rough draft with each other. So that kind of teaches them like writing, basic writing skills, and also like how to do complete sentences to make a story. And it's kind of fun because they get to make up a story, and if they really like a certain genre, they kind of get that freedom to choose. So that's kind of like multiple means of engagement, because it's like if you just had like write a mystery, well, if someone doesn't like a mystery, then maybe their writing won't be as good. But it's like write whatever genre, so it's like, okay, I like this and he likes that. So the math one was it was order of operations, and this one I put as my favorite because it was just so phenomenal. I would have never even thought about order of operations like this, but it pretty much is like in the beginning he had them all have whiteboards, and then he kind of had them all participate while he went over, but then he kind of used this funny little cartoon in the beginning. It was like on like why we do certain operations in that order. It was like a picture of like a person who put the milk carton on top of the eggs, and then they put a watermelon on top of the eggs, and then the eggs got crushed. And it was like talking about like, well, you should have put in the watermelon first and then the eggs on top, right?
Mm-hmm.
The order does matter. And then he had them on the whiteboards each draw how they would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So like, and he's talking about, so what do you do first? You have to have the bread, because you can't put peanut butter on nothing, right?
Right.
You have to have the bread first, and you put the peanut butter and then the jelly, or like, vice versa, and then you put it together, So it was kind of like you have to have certain order of things. So he kind of just went into that, and then he went into the more procedural. He went into PEMDAS and showed, all those, and then he did the funny acronym, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," as well, to also help them remember. So it's just like a really good explicit lesson that was full of really like fun, relatable ways to think about order of operations in math. And then he had them practice it by doing a tic-tac-toe assignment. So like it had a tic-tac-toe board, and it had problems on it that were like, somewhere in parentheses, and then you plus something, and they had to like use the PEMDAS to like solve it in order to put the X on the tic-tac-toe board. So like that was, it makes it fun, So I thought overall it was just really well done lesson, just because it was just so creative. And like I said, I would never thought of it that way. And if I were to teach it, I would teach it like that, especially with a funny cartoon, because kids like that. And now I'm getting into my least the least effective one, I think, just because it's the math geometry. It's 50% learning, 50% understanding. Pretty much, it's like how to calculate percentages. So it's pretty much like it gives them the formula, and then they watch a video on BrainPop on Prezi on what percentage actually means. So it's pretty much just a video, and then afterward they just practice on a worksheet using that formula, kind of, and that's about it. So that's why I put that one as my least, because it was just kind of like, I mean, some things are simple enough, but like I just feel like it's like, here's the formula, here's a video of it, and do an assignment, and go for it. It was just kind of weird. I mean, it still kind of had that. It was really good. I mean, like, I'm sure it was really informational and they learned a lot from it, but I just feel like it was just really, I don't know, video based, not as much instruction outside of the video. I don't know. I don't really know like what the standard is for like using videos to teach as much, or if you just rely on them, or it's like a helper. I don't know. But yeah, those were my 4. So, and yeah, and my best one and then my worst one.
I did the orders of operations once too.
Oh,
So I thought that one was really good with how well he explained everything and did the step by step.
Yeah, if you want to add anything to it that I missed, you can. But I think
No,
you explain it.
you did such a good job explaining everything. I don't know what else to say about it.
No, I'm like sorry. I'm just too thorough. But I guess who wants to go next? I guess that's a good one.
I can go next.
Yeah.
So of course he already did the other one. Luckily he didn't choose that one as my favorite. So
for an explanation, yeah.
It makes it okay. I'll get any other ones. So my first 2 were for the language arts ones. The first one was called The Holocaust, 5th grade social studies and language arts. So this one was really cool because it did draw in those other experiences of like social studies for kids to kind of look at real life events while doing these lesson plans. And he or she explained that like one of her students is a struggling reader, and so that she kind of helped cater by pairing her strong readers with struggling readers throughout the class, so they could like work together and kind of help with different reading. She also offered kids who are different types of learners to have different options, which I thought was really cool. This is actually my favorite one just because she offered so many different options. So she would have an option for the auditory learners just to listen to the story that they were reading, because they were reading a book called Number the Stars. And so she had that audio version of the book, and then visual learners would follow along with the copy of the book, and then the kinesthetic learners could take notes while reading. And then there's also opportunities for students to work on their own and as groups. So this plan was for like a period of time, and so 45 minutes a day she would set aside for them to do a little bit of reading. And then she had like questions for some days, and then other days she had like guided practice where they would like summarize different sections that they were reading. And then independent practice, they would answer questions on their own, comprehension. She would also introduce concepts and vocab by writing definitions on like the whiteboard, so kids would kind of understand what was going to be anticipated that day. So that was that one. The next one was actually my least favorite because it was very vague. It's called My Book. Pretty much what she had was students were creating a book to give to their younger sibling, a cousin, a friend. They used creativity and their artistic talents to make a book about a child. And this one was also a multiple day plan, 45 minutes for 5 days. And it was really confusing how she set it up, because she just had like a list of like, students will write a book, students will be creative, students will learn how to use, students will edit, students will then work on oral reading. So it was just like, okay, so that was just a vague explanation. And like her opening was just student or teacher reads a child's book and then goes over meaning of rough draft. And then like independent day 1, it just goes over what she wants out of the book and not really how to do it. And it's just reading over this, it's just so drives me nuts. They're just like one word explanations of each day or like one sentence. It's not like
yeah, as a sub that would be hard.
Yeah, and I mean she lists all the materials, but it's like, okay, but how are you supposed to have these students go through with it? Like it just drives me nuts. I can't look at it. It's so crazy.
Jeez.
And then the final one was coordinate planes. So just a geometry lesson on the coordinate planes. This one was actually another really good one. I had a hard time deciding which was my favorite, just because they had a really good in-depth explanation of this one. Almost too much at times because she did a lot of paragraphs.
Oh, yeah.
But if you like read into it, she actually explains like different steps to take for different types of students. Like she has assessments A and B for students who are with or below proficiency, and then because she explained that she has to teach this class 3 different times. The first time to or wait, no, is that the other one? No. One of her classes was far below the standard that they needed to be at, so she needed to work a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she had those 2 different, because then she had 3 other classes that were all pretty proficient and or above. Kind of like the one that you chose, how he had different levels. And
that's true.
And then she had like a final project, and yeah, it goes over a lot of stuff, and it would take a lot of time. But my least favorite was the book, and then my favorite was the one of the Holocaust.
Yeah, sounds like that was a good one. I almost chose the Holocaust one too.
I really liked it,
but I didn't because I find it depressing. But I don't know. But yeah. Okay, I guess Maya, you can go.
Okay, so I don't think I did this correctly then, because like I did look at the individual, like I specified what she said to do, but I just kind of wrote down, like I didn't really like explain what it was about. I just kind of wrote down notes on like what I thought was like done well, or like what could be improved upon, not necessarily what the whole lesson was about.
Oh. It's kind of like a summary, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I just like,
Just fake anyway.
because like, okay, for example, like for the first like English one, it was like writer's workshop. So then like the first portion was like the goals of like the lesson, and I just explained like how, I don't think I did this correctly, but I just like explained like how I like that there is a goal like there to help students, and like the goal and like how they explain how the goal is for the students to express themselves in a different way, than just like writing like a formal paper or whatever. Like if they use like poetry uh, to do this, and just like to express their ideas, and it doing this reaches like different types of like learners and students, because not everyone expresses themselves in the same way, and this may be more approachable for certain students who like this creativity. Um, and then, okay, yeah, this is really bad. Um, so then I like how also for this, there are multiple forms of assessment, which again can be beneficial for students that may not uh, test very well, I guess, like written or like with written testing, if they have like oral testing or like a different form of testing. Um, One thing I said um, that I guess could be included in this is maybe include like a discussion on why people write poems, or like the different purposes of poems, or like what people try, I guess, kind of what uh, like what I guess can be beneficial of writing a poem versus like another form of writing. Um, and then I like how in the end, like she, I think, uh, would have like the class share after like writing their own. She would have the class, like the students, share their ideas and like their own poems, um, that they had written with their peers, just to see, and like also like you can then see like from there, like even with the same kind of like guidelines or whatever, um, people can approach it very differently, or like have different ways of writing. That, yeah, that's that one. For the other English one, it had to do with like theme, and like the question of like what theme is. Um, so I like how this uh, this written, or this, I guess, lesson plan or whatever, like approaches the topic, or like the idea of like having different students like with different learning styles in your class, and like how to engage all of those students in the class, um, and just to see like how we can have everyone participate and become involved in the discussion, rather than just sit there and um, kind of just take in that information. Because I mean, that's good that they can take that in, but it's also good for them to become involved and like active in the class. Um, for the assessments, I mentioned how the different approaches to this can uh, determine, like, I guess, a student's understanding of what they went over in the class, and to see where they may be struggling, um, and to see where they may need to spend more time on this concept or idea, or if they can just move on. for the like instructional methods, I liked how it clearly like laid out what they were going to focus on for that given day, and then I also like how at the end of the class session, she said that how she would kind of look at what they started with, and kind of after going through everything, kind of like wrap up their class with like kind of restating like the main objectives or like the key takeaway items, which I think is very like is a good thing to do because sometimes like students I guess can forget kind of what the big like the whole idea for the day was. Yeah, that's what I like about that one. I also did that order of operation, like, or I just kind of like explained what I liked and didn't like, so I'm not gonna even talk about that just because you already discussed that, and
Yeah.
I didn't even do
Yes,
that.
we all like.
Yeah. So the other math one I chose was learning of different shapes, and this one I guess was like my least favorite just because it was like vague. Not necessarily that it has to be like lengthy, but it just didn't go into like a lot of detail into like what the lesson would entail for that given day, which can like cause confusion or misunderstanding. Um, and like especially like for the goals of the lesson and like the takeaways from it, I felt like that could have been more explicitly written and like gone to better or more in depth with that. And then, oh, sorry. But I did like how they did again discuss how to like approach students with IEPs and 504 plans and like how to get them involved and how to best support them in learning this material that may be difficult for them to understand or fully grasp. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Pretty bad, but
No, it's good. It's good. I think it's still informational.
Mm-hmm.
Still explain the lesson, so that was all you really needed to do, really.
okay.
Good. I know. Felt like 2 out of 4 ain't bad. Ending the assignment. Just kidding. I think the point is still across for all of us.
Yeah.
So as long as you did something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
You didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Might have all have.
Yeah. That would be very bad.
I think it's a good example that like different lesson plans can be interpreted different ways, no matter how you word it.
You right.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Like someone may have a completely different intention when they write one versus when they like teach it, or if someone else has to teach it, be like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I noticed that sometimes with the classes we have, even in college, it's like, whoa, what do you want me to do?
Right. All right, yeah. Well, Maya, you're gonna help me tomorrow.
Okay.
Point me in the right direction, at least.
Well, yeah, we'll see if I can.
Do on Sunday.
That's true.
The comparison with your midterm lesson plan.
Oh, with that. Okay, yeah. Wait. So, are we supposed to just like look at like?
So we're supposed to like look at the one that we liked the best and then compare it to our midterm.
And just like see like what we did and what we can improve upon or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but like using like the best one as a comparison.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Shouldn't be too bad. But yeah.
Huh.
But that way maybe Lauren can choose one. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as long as I mean, it would suck to get points taken off for this, but like as long as I do Sundays better, then I mean I still can do like the notes here and like and so like
yeah.
But
that would be fine.
Yeah, as long as Sundays good, but
yeah, this shouldn't be too bad. Should be easy.
Yep.
I like Tuesdays better. Let's keep it Tuesdays. I'm really happy because Thursdays. I was just so tired on Thursdays. I'm just,
and like both work for me, but it just kind of like stresses me out to like push it back when this is due on Friday and then that's due on like more
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, like Thursday night you have to like do it, or Friday you have to do it.
Yeah. So
Friday.
but of course if something comes up then
Yeah.
there's no response.
Survive 2 weeks doing that. So, you know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm happier Tuesday. I have more energy. I feel better. Thursday, I'm so
Yeah.
tired. Like I'm just like I don't want to go hang out in the evening.
Yeah.
Thursdays, it's not my goal. Okay. Well, I guess for next Tuesday then.
Yes.
Part 2. And remember, paste the link, you know the drill, you know.
Yep.
Right now.
Sounds
We're
good.
all experts. Okay.
All right.
I will see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.